Regis Prograis says that tough fights are better than undisputed. Undisputed don't mean nothing. Um, well, I mean, according to me, look, if you ask me, and according to history, undisputed really doesn't mean anything. But the fact that we have the things that we have now, and undisputed can be made into like a tournament style event as far as lining up fights for other people and fans and for fighters to be able to down the line say I face this guy, I face that guy, like how it was in the 90s. In the 90s, we don't talk as much about like in the 90s, 2000. We don't talk about boxers as far as who lost, who won. Mostly we talk about who fought first. Like, oh, you remember when so and so fought? So I would agree on Regis Prograis as far as we don't remember who fought for what belt or nothing like that. But I will say though, it does sound bittersweet because Josh Taylor just had the undisputed, so it's kind of bittersweet. It's like you lost to Josh Taylor, and now you're saying undisputed doesn't mean anything. On that side of things, it's kind of like you sound bitter because you still have fights ahead of you. You have a big fight coming up with Devin Haney December 9th. That you still have a chance to claim glory, but to say it doesn't mean anything. I understand what you're saying as far as from a view, but from a boxer stand, I don't want a boxer speaking like a fan. And then like most of the guys aren't having tough fights right now anyway, so who cares about tough fights? We'll worry about undisputed at this point. If you guys were having tough fights all the time, we wouldn't care about undisputed. But people are more business minded these days and they want to get paid, which I understand. But also, this is an entertainment business. This isn't, oh, I want to see my favorite guy get paid good. Like, most fans aren't thinking like that. Most good fans are, or considerable fans, but most of the time when you paying for something, you like when you watching a movie, you're not thinking about how much they paid. Oh, how much they paid to make this movie? Oh, I'll go see it if they paid $1 billion. Like, no, who cares? Like, just we want to see hard fights, which you agree upon, right? But they're not happening. So what do we have next? Undisputed. We have undisputed right now that's not even happening. The undisputed that haven't been happening. The only reason some of them are happening right now because we're having people that are throwing away the win-loss thing as far as trying to stay undefeated. A lot of these guys don't care. A lot of these guys, they're forced to. A lot of these guys, they looking for their last payday, so they got to give up their O. A lot of guys are in cases like Triple G, Golovkin, where he's just searching for the best option. He's not really doing anything, sat on the belt for as long as he could, things like that. But I would consider like what Canelo is doing better than what most are doing, because most people aren't giving just the average Joe who's a threat a shot. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying like the average Joe. I'm just talking about like a top 10, top 15 boxer. Like when Canelo gave Danny Jacobs a shot. He had just lost to Triple G, but he still turned around and gave him a shot, which was a thing that he should have because the fights were close. But I would say like he's a guy who takes tough fights. I would consider that a tough fight. He doesn't take the toughest fights available as far as what fans are looking to take, but he still takes considerably tough fights compared to what other people are taking. That's what makes the other fights so weak. The fights that Canelo are taking, like with a Rocky Field, and other guys are taking those too. And they're calling those big fights. That's why I'm kind of like shaky on when people talking about, oh, Crawford don't got a resume. Because you don't know the guy, he doesn't have a resume, or is the boxer trash? Is he trash or you don't know him? Now, if you don't know him, that doesn't mean that it's not a tough fight. You just don't know the guy. Just like when I told people with Esau Cruz, oh, Tank went 12 rounds with Esau Cruz. Who is this guy? The guy who just went 12 rounds with him, you need to find out who he is. He's a threat. It looks like, right? That's what I'm trying to tell people. Like, maybe he's just better than what you thought he was. But they're like, no, he went 12 rounds with him. It was a tough fight. And guess what people want to do now? They said Tank looked bad in the fight. They talked about how bad it was. Tank lost. But guess what? They want to see a rematch, though. Because it was a good fight. The guy was tougher than what you thought. And it wasn't for Undisputed. So, yeah, we take tough fights over Undisputed. But if it happens to be Undisputed, it just happens to be Undisputed. But I understand what he's saying. But this era can't talk about tough fights, man. Not this era. Not this era. Most guys that I consider that take tough fights, they're not your favorite boxer. Erickson Lubin taking a tough fight right now. He's not your favorite boxer. J-Rock, Julian Williams just took a hard fight off a long layoff. Off somebody over someone that everybody said was a hard guy to fight. Had a close fight with him. People don't consider him a guy who's take tough fights. He takes tough fights. He fights top guys. When it's all said and done, you're gonna end up watching probably his fights more than some other guys. Just like with Crawford, people gonna go back and they're gonna be like, wow. Oh, Crawford fought this guy. Oh, he did this against Jeff Horn. Oh, okay, he looked this good against Jose Benavidez. Yes, he's been looking this good. But you're going to have to go back and actually figure out who he fought, because the tough fights, people think tough fights is, oh, I know who the guy is, so that's a tough fight. It's not a tough fight. That's not a tough fight. You know what I'm saying? That's not a tough fight. If you look at what, the way Josh Taylor been fighting ever since Regis Prograis, most people wouldn't consider that a tough fight. And he was undisputed. So you can't say undisputed doesn't mean anything. If you say undisputed doesn't mean anything, it comes off as bitter because you were just almost undisputed. So if you would have became undisputed, would you would have said, nah, undisputed don't mean nothing because I ain't fought the toughest guys? You probably would have. No lie. You probably would have. You probably would say something like that. I give you a 99% chance you probably would say something. But people would be like, you're wrong. People would say you're wrong, though. You know what I'm saying? So I would take the tough fights, but the tough fights ain't happening. So until they happen, I'm not going to go into a whole dialogue as far as why Undisputed isn't good or why it isn't. But I know why he's probably saying that, because of the way the fights are lined up and all that. But he's had perfect positions to get what he's needed. Like, so I don't understand what he's saying as far as that. But that's all I got, though. Like and subscribe.